Hey everybody, welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. Right away you can see we're in a different location. My good buddy John Wetmore, you've seen John on some previous episodes. We're actually at John's place. We're talking to a band that we kind of discovered by accident.
It was
way
by
back.
accident.
Yeah. Back in the days of...
Kind of like the Joe Perry project.
Yeah.
By accident.
Now they call it the dump bin. We used to call it the bargain bin. And the bargain bin introduced us to a great sort of unsung rock band, and I'm talking about Vandenberg. Now, a lot of you out there have heard of Vandenberg because of the name Adrian Vandenberg, the guitar player. He wrote all the songs, played all the guitars, even did the album artwork. It was his band. And they weren't together for very long. Of course, he went on to join Whitesnake, and now he has a band called Vandenberg's Moon Kings. But we're talking about the albums that they only did 3 studio albums, and there's a couple of compilations and a couple other things to talk about. But I first heard of this band probably the year before I found their first album, because I had this magazine about Whitesnake when they were at the peak of their success, when the self-titled album was really big. And it went over all of the current members of the band, what they did before they were in Whitesnake. So with David Coverdale, they talked about his time with Deep Purple. With Vivian Campbell, they talked about his time with Dio, etc., etc. And there was an article with Adrian Vandenberg. It said that he had his own band called Vandenberg. So I learned they had 3 albums, and they had a top 40 single with a song called Burning Heart, and that's basically what I knew. So I didn't know, this is pre-internet, we didn't know what any of these things looked like. It was just trial and error.
Hard to believe what the world was like before internet.
You had to have really keen eyesight. It helped if you knew, you know, maybe what the label was on, so you could tell what the tape would look like. But I do remember this specifically. I'm pretty sure it was our last day of grade 9. We just finished whatever exam it was, and A&A Records and Tapes used to be up in the Carlton Mall in Woodstock, and they had a wonderful bargain bin. We found
It was awesome.
We
Bargain
found
bins are awesome.
many a treasure there, and I remember coming across. Maybe hold that up, John. That's yours. My original version was Canadian, so it looked a little tiny different, but same cover. The first Vandenberg album, and it was not very expensive.
You can't really see that real well,
Yeah,
but
just self-titled.
Vandenberg.
And it was on Atco Records, which is Atlantic, basically the same thing. So I thought, well, for the price of it, I'm going to take a chance on it and take it home. And it was a wise investment because it's good, to say the least. It's just...
It is real good. It's
just
a lot like the music of that time period.
Yeah, I can see why David Coverdale was interested in poaching Adrian Vandenberg for his, not only for his playing, for his writing skills, because it wasn't too dissimilar to Whitesnake. It was melodic, hard rock. They could be really heavy at times. They could be melodic. They could do ballads, but they could do fast, heavy stuff. And it's just a good hard rock album. And I thought, okay, well, I know they have 2 more. And the thing is, again, pre-internet, I didn't know what they were called or what they looked like. But well, before we get to the next one, we'll talk about the other formats. And they're not, none of them are easy to find at all. So this is the first Vandenberg album on vinyl. Pretty cool logo. I think they were, obviously with the van, they were going for something that didn't look unlike the Van Halen logo, right, especially the logo on the first album. Now, you look at the back cover, which I didn't know, or I didn't see when I just had the cassette, but they really could have used someone to help them with their clothes. But I especially like how this guy's got his pants tucked into his boots, the drummer. But listen, that I'm kidding. It's really, really good stuff, and it really doesn't matter. Adrian liked his leopard skin print, whatever, striped pants.
They kind of carried that out from the 70s, didn't they?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. So anyway, but none of that matters. It's a good record, really good record. This is, I don't think it had an original lyric sleeve. This just is the Atlantic group on it. And the vinyl itself looked like this, with the Atco logo. So, God bless Japan, because we found many an import CD from Japan. It's not the easiest thing to find Vandenberg CDs.
The first one we found was the YNT
Earthshaker.
Earthshaker.
Yeah,
That was awesome.
So this is actually not a Japanese release, although it's got elements of it. A company called Wounded Bird reissued a lot of great rock albums that had gone out of print in the early 2000s. A lot of Atlantic artists, including the first 3 Vandenberg. I needed the first one, so here's what it looks like. Now, originally when I got it, it looked like this on the side. I didn't really care too much about how that looked. So I found a copy of the Japanese version that looks more like an official Atlantic CD, so I just kind of stuck that in there, but it really doesn't matter. The main thing was having these songs on disc. That's the disc itself, and it just reprinted the first, or what was on the back cover. Now, there's lyrics in it, but I don't know if they originally came with the record. It could have, very well could have. So again, the bargain bin strikes. And I think it was about a month later we went up to A&A's again, and I found this very cassette. This is a Canadian version of the second Vandenberg album, Heading for a Storm. We'll talk more about the artwork when I show the record off, but what I think is cool about the back of this is that a lot of the Warner Brothers Electra Atlantic tapes at the time, just hold that up, John, with the picture there, they all looked like that. If you picture Van Halen's 1984, or the first Honeymoon Suite album, they had the format with the song titles, then there was a picture, and then there was a little bit of credits. And I think this is the first time that there was any information inside one of them.
Nice.
And I think it was the first time that I learned the other band members' names.
Just credits inside,
yeah.
no lyrics. But
Singer's name is Bert Heerink. The bass player's name was Dick Motorhome Kemper. I didn't know why his nickname was Motorhome, but apparently in Dutch, Kemper is pronounced more like Camper. So that's why they called him Motorhome.
Yep.
And the drummer's name was Jos or Jos Zoomer, which if you've heard him play, he does some pretty fast double bass in some songs. So Zoomer is an apt name. So this is my copy on CD. It's a Japanese import. So that's what it looks like on the side there. The other side is in Japanese. Actually, it was the other way around. I had to reverse them so that when they had the English side up front. This came with a lot of Japanese discs. I don't know what it says. It's in Japanese, but it's a write-up on the band and the album.
I'll have to get a translator.
Yeah, yeah. And
But
here's
the album itself is not in Japanese.
no, it's
correct?
not. It's looks like your typical Atlantic CD. Same picture that's on the back of the cassette. For some reason, they're holding up these panels, and it's got these lyrics in it, which I believe were translated from Japanese into English. So sometimes they're not accurate, but sometimes they are. So, and of course we got some vinyl to talk about, and this is where I'm going to talk about the artwork, because Adrian is an artist. He specializes in a technique called super realism, which is painting as photorealistic as you can. But his whole thing is if it looks real, he wants to put things that are ridiculous on it. Thus, we have sharks going down the highway, which has absolutely nothing to do with anything. Least of all, doesn't have anything to do with the title, Heading for a Storm. There's the logo again. This is a Canadian record. You can tell by the maple leaf up there.
In fact, if they were outside of a casino, they could be card sharks.
They could be, these are card sharks. This is the desert outside Las Vegas. You
It is.
nailed it. You nailed it. And here's what the record itself looks like.
That was the clue that we needed all along.
That was yeah. So then a month later in Bangor, I found this at a store that didn't even have a music section. It was just
Bangor
a department
is
store,
awesome.
and found another bargain bin with $3.99 cassettes, and there it was, the third Vandenberg album, Alibi, with again cool artwork, but we'll show that off when we get to the vinyl.
And that just had credits
It's
inside.
got some credits in it. That one's got a hole punched in it. The first album did decently. Unfortunately, the second two did not, but I highly recommend. You can't really go wrong with any of it. Here it is on CD. This again is a Japanese CD. This came out in 1985. So much like Coney Hatch, the album went 82, 83, 85, and then, you know, that was it. Well, Coney Hatch eventually put out another one, but for Vandenberg, that was it. And again, this one has a... I used to keep the Obi strips too, the little things that went on the side of them, but they've gone missing over the years. So I'm assuming these are the lyrics and that these are it's a write-up. But
Or it could be the Japanese version, like translated, the translation of the credits maybe.
yeah, so all this has in it here is the lyrics, and then in the back there is one page of the credits, which were in the cassette. And this one eluded me on vinyl for a long time, but I recently found it. And another cool cover painting by Adrian himself, with an alligator coming up out of the ground in where appears to be like sphinxes and stuff like that. Not sphinxes, but I don't know what you'd call it. Interesting, they don't have the logo on the front of this. It's on the back. And this is a Canadian version as well. But yeah, good stuff. And here's the record itself. So what happened after that, of course, is that Adrian joined Whitesnake in their peak period. So it makes sense in 1988 that Atco Records thought they'd cash in on that by putting out just a single album, Best of Vandenberg, with definitely a Whitesnake era photo of Adrian on it, again on Atco Records. It's a good single album compilation, just gives you a taster of what was on it. There's a write-up about the band in there, which is useful because I learned a lot from reading that. Again, none of these albums are all that common. Here's the CD, and not much else different. It's just on CD. Oddly enough, this one is blue instead of red. The Atlantic ones are usually red. And the write-up was from Derek Oliver, who was an A&R guy for, I think, for Atco Records, and he was also, I think he was a rock writer in the UK. So, and also have this on vinyl, and there's the basically the write-up and everything takes up the back cover. This is a US copy. Adrian was known for having the reverse headstock guitars too.
Yes.
That was something that was, and he also had one that had a like a puzzle pattern on it or something. And this record looks like the Alibi record. And a couple more things to talk to you about. I think these both came out around the same time, but I'll show you this first. This one did. So I'm really glad that this came out because, you know, without new compilations, people forget about bands. And even though this didn't come out in North America, I found it online and it's well worth picking up. The definitive Vandenberg, again, that's a cover portrait by Adrian himself. This is a 2-disc collection. And disc 1 is songs from the first 3 albums, including a newly re-recorded version of Burning Heart, with the band got back together to do the one song. Disc 2 is really where the gold is, because there's some unreleased songs like Out of Cash, Help Me Through the Night, Roll Through the Night. There's songs that have never appeared anywhere else, and some demos and some live versions. As a matter of fact, I think I looked at this once again and I compared it to the other albums. With the exception of 3 or 4 songs, I think every single Vandenberg song is on here. So if you're going to get one thing, get this. But like I said, there's so few things, you might as well get it all. So there's the disc 1 and disc 2. And this one had a pretty good write-up, lots of pictures, some magazine pictures that they were featured in. Shows the, let's see, there it is. It shows them, you know, they were opening for Ozzy. I know that they opened for Kiss. They were on some big tours. They just never completely broke through.
Which is odd. The music is very typical of that time period, the early mid '80s.
Yeah.
If you like the Whitesnake albums that he plays on, it's very typical of that type of music.
It's you know, if you're into I would say that if you're into Van Halen, you know, guitar playing, maybe Triumph.
It's a hard rock.
It's hard rock
style.
With it could, you know, they were poppy enough to get on the radio, but they were heavy enough to play like metal festivals. So one other thing that came out in 2005, I think it originally came out on VHS back in the 80s. This is Vandenberg live in Japan, and this is a concert from the Heading for a Storm tour. Quite a few songs, and as a matter of fact, so you pretty much got all the songs on the first 2 albums, and a preview of one that would appear on Alibi, because they do the instrumental Kamikaze, which is the final song on Alibi. That's on here too, but there's also some bonus features. It's them live doing the new version of Burning Heart, which wouldn't have been on the original VHS, of course. Then there's a documentary called Single Luck, single as in hit single. It's the story of Vandenberg, which is in Dutch, but is subtitled in English. And it's got video clips on here for Burning Heart, Your Love Is in Vain, Different Worlds, and Once in a Lifetime, which is cool. But for some reason, I don't know why, if they're going to go through the trouble, they didn't put all their videos on here. Because I went on YouTube and I got looking, and there actually is a video for Friday Night. So I don't know why they didn't stick that on here either, but I'm not going to complain. It's some vintage footage of a band that you don't see very much about. And yeah, see, that was released to coincide with the definitive Vandenberg, because there it is.
Right.
So there it is. They were kind of born and died, and then that was it. Although I do have one other thing to show you. In '89, Whitesnake were working on the follow-up album to the 1987 album, and Adrian Vandenberg co-wrote 9 out of the 10 songs on that album with David Coverdale, with the exception of Fool for Your Loving, which was a remake.
Right.
But they were going to do Burning Heart, and I remember after I heard Vandenberg's version, I thought, oh, that's going to sound awesome with David Coverdale singing. As a matter of fact, it might have been a hit, given the time period. It didn't make it, although there is a very, very rough demo on it that appears on the 30th anniversary edition of Whitesnake's Slip of the Tongue. So that continues the Vandenberg story a little bit further. So John, that's kind of our band. I don't know too many other people that are into Vandenberg, but
No.
hopefully this will change that. So check it out. If you see any Vandenberg stuff, pick it up. Thanks for watching Tim's Final Confessions.